When I first met Sandy a year and a half ago, she came here to the Writing Center for help with an essay. And when I started coming through the door, I thought it would be like any other appointment. But when the student worker came up to me to hand me her login information, he said, by the way, she's deaf. And for a second, I had this moment of, oh no, how is this going to work? But then I thought about my own experience being hard of hearing, growing up that way, and not even knowing it until a year later after I met her. And I thought to myself, it's okay, I know what to do. So I sat her down, and I looked straight at her, and I looked straight in her face, and I spoke really extremely loudly and enunciated like I never had before so she could read my lips. And I made a lot of crazy gestures, and I'm sure I looked nuttier than I usually do during any of them. So I actually had some misconceptions about the way communication works between hearing and even hard of hearing and deaf individuals. And some of those misconceptions are that these things always work. Sign language, note writing, and lip reading. And the first one, sign language, one of the things that most people think is that it's universal. Like if you know ASL, then you know French Sign Language, or that you can go to Brazil and speak to a deaf person. That everyone knows it and that's all the same. But actually, the National Association of the Deaf in 2019 again said that sign language is not a universal language. Each country has its own sign language, and regions have dialects. So, just like everywhere has, we have slang and everything, and people from the West, sound different than people here. It's the sign language is the same way, and it varies with country. Okay. And the other thing about it is that there's also, even within America, there's Pidgin Signed English, which is just sign language but in correct English wording, like English order. And then there's also SEE, which is Signed Exact English. So that's even adding the ing endings and everything like that. The other thing is that actually not all deaf people learn sign language. Sandy's parents actually wanted her to be normal. Okay, they didn't like the idea of her being deaf, despite that that's what she was. So they did not want to learn sign language. They thought that it would prevent her from learning English, that she would rely too heavily on it. So Tom Humphreys in 2017 Journal of Medical Ethics states that many people who have no or minimal experience with sign language users, including new parents of deaf children and professionals who advise them, have fears about the difficulty of learning sign language. So there's always been this fear and controversy about it. And that's another one of the things that people don't quite realize. Also, sign language is not pantomime. So the gesturing that I was doing with Sandy, a lot of people kind of think like, you're like, oh, let's, is your essay about, riding a horse, and that's what I was kind of trying to do with her. It doesn't work like that. It's actually 3D language. So there are many things involved. So there are mouth morphemes. A morpheme is the smallest unit of a language that has meaning. So the word unit actually has two morphemes, unit and the S, which is the suffix plural. Okay, so for sign language, you actually use your mouth. So if I wanted to say something, I was studying something very, very, very hard, there's no word for very, very, very. Instead, you would purse your lips. So the more I purse my lips, the harder I'm studying. So it would look like this. Okay. Also, there's hand shapes, as we know by the alphabet. Okay. There's facial expressions. So if I went like this to you, would you know what I meant by that, right? But if I went like this, you would know that I was happy, sad, bored. Okay. So that's a huge thing in sign language. There's also spatial orientations to show where things are in relation to each other, and non-manual signals. When you're asking a yes or no question, you raise your eyebrows. And when you want like a who, what, where, why, when, you furrow your eyebrows. It also has its own grammar. So it's different than English grammar. So I could say, me and my friends and I went to a football game Friday night, but in sign language it's actually time, topic, comment, subject, action. So it'd be, past Friday night, me, my friends, football game, we go, okay? So it's a little bit different. Also, another misconception people have is that they can just write notes. So this obviously I tried with Sandy too. And the problem is if a person doesn't know ASL, the grammar is flat, the expression is flat. We just talked about facial expressions. So when it's on paper, it doesn't come across the same way. Also, the grammar will have a disconnect, especially if they have prelingual deafness. So prelingual means before they learned a language, so like for birth. Okay. So Brett Furlonger from the Southeast Asian Journal of English Language Studies says, many adults with profound prelingual deafness have difficulties reading and comprehending written English, and this problem may originate from English phonological deficits, meaning that they never heard the sound, they're writing on the page wouldn't mean anything. Finally, lip reading is another kind of thing that people just assume all deaf people can do. But the problem with lip reading is that inaccuracy is common. So a lot of times when you're talking really fast or really loud, things get kind of distorted, right? If you're very emotional, who has ever been crying and said, I love you? Like if I said, would you know? No. Okay. Also, accents, mouth visibility, if people have facial hair, you can't really see past a mustache or a beard. Also, things have similar sounds, like, I'm not telling you I love you, I'm saying elephant shoes. So, that has similar mouth movements. And if you've ever played a game of like telephone, right, or if your cell phone ever cut out, that's kind of what it's like, because actually the Allegheny College Student Disability Services in 2019 said it's important to note, however, that speech reading is only a partial solution, since experts estimate that only about 30 to 40% of spoken English is distinguishable on the lips, even by the best speech readers under the most favorable conditions. Now, you may or may not have noticed while I've been talking, this lip moves, and this side doesn't sometimes, okay? So, do you know what I said? No, because only this side moves. I said if I enunciated as much as I could, you wouldn't know what I was saying. Finally, obviously, if you have like impaired sight, it's going to be harder to lip read, and again, with the prelingual deafness, you may not have the connect-on sounds. So finally, so those are the things that we have misconceptions about: sign language, note writing, and lip reading. As our good friend G.I. Joe said, now you know, knowing is half the battle. Sandy actually taught me more than I taught her in our time together about this. So I'd like to see if any of you have any misconceptions that you want cleared up.
How many years does it take to learn like lip reading or sign language, or both, I guess?
So I wouldn't say that there's like a particular amount of time. I just took a year of ASL. I was actually diagnosed with superior semicircular canal dehiscence disorder, something my ear bone never grew since birth, but I adapted to it. But I just took a year of sign language. And when I went to apply to my program that I'm trying to get into, I didn't cut it, even though I practiced all the time and I got A's in the class. So, some people pick up on it, if they're like kind of in the deaf culture, whereas when I'm in class, it's almost like more memorization. So like unless you're fully immersed, it can take longer. Lip
Right.
reading too is like an extensive training.
Yeah.
Some people take years, some people probably pick it up quite well. What other questions do you have?
Is it required to learn for your teacher or?
So, no, it's actually not. I learned because there is this possibility that my hearing could get worse. And I've actually always been interested in sign language, so it was just something I always wanted to do, and then all of a sudden through meeting Sandy and then realizing this about myself, I said, let me take it on. This is a good time to do it now.
So then it's not like the standard?
No, like most people, a lot of people really don't know it. Like even like 95% of deaf children are born to hearing parents, so.
Wow. Do you know how many people are deaf?
I don't know that
In America?
statistic, I would have to look that up, but I'm not sure. Good question.
Homework.
It's good, I will look that up. Anybody else?